and welcome to Devotions with the Dubes. I am Tennille Dube.
And I am Mandla Dube. And today we continue with our devotion on the first book of Samuel. And last time we looked at chapter 10 where Saul was anointed as king. And this week we're continuing with the journey of the Israelites.
And today we're looking at 1Samuel chapter 11. And let's read verse 1. It says, "About a month later, King Nahash of Ammon led his army against the Israelite town of Jabesh Gilead. But all the citizens of Jabesh asked for peace. 'Make a treaty with us, and we will be your servants,' they pleaded." So now a treaty is an agreement between two different groups, and the purpose of a treaty is usually to end a war or a battle. Now we see here that the Israelites thought that their only option was to make a treaty with the Ammonites. And instead of going before God, they make this agreement to be the servants of the Ammonites. And so they panicked and came up with the solution instead of seeking the Lord. And sometimes in our life, it's the same. When we go through rough patches, we try to find solutions on our own instead of seeking the Lord for his solutions. And we read here that King Nahash agrees to this treaty, but on one condition. He gives them an ultimatum here. And in verse 2 it says, "But only on one condition, I will gouge out the right eye of every one of you." And he makes it clear here that they had two options. They either surrender or they be conquered. And he also makes it very clear why he wants to gouge out their right eyes. And if we read the end of verse 2, it says, "as a disgrace to all of Israel." And another reason for wanting to take out their right eyes was because if he took out the right eyes of their army, then the Israelites would not be able to fight against the Ammonites. So in verse 3, the elders of Jabesh Gilead go before Nahash and say, "Give us 7 days to send word to Israel, and if no one comes to save us, then we will agree to these conditions." Now King Nahash, he allowed the messenger to go to Israel for a few reasons. So the first reason was because he thought that there was no one who was going to save them anyway. And secondly, he knew that if the messenger took this message across Israel, that his name would be famous and everyone would start to fear him. And it's the same in our lives. The enemy has strategies that he uses. So the enemy cannot do anything against us if we first do not surrender to him. And the enemy uses intimidation to get what he wants. And number 3, the enemy wants to humiliate us. And in doing so, he exalts himself. And lastly, the enemy wants to take away our ability to fight against him. And we know the only way we can fight against the enemy is with God on our side. So let's continue with the story. So the messengers go to Gibeah, which is Saul's hometown, and he tells the people about the message from Jabesh. And if we read the end of verse 4, it says that everyone broke into tears. And this just shows that they didn't have faith in God to believe that he could deliver them from King Nahash. And it tells us in the next verse that Saul was plowing in the field. And I think this just reminds me that Saul is so humble at this point because he was the king of Israel, but here he is in the field. So when he returns to the city, he sees everyone crying and he asks, what happened? Why is everyone crying? So they tell them about the message from Jabesh. Now when Saul saw this, he was really angry. And we're going to read in verse 6. It says, "Then the Spirit of God came powerfully upon Saul, and he became very angry. And God filled Saul with a righteous anger." So now righteous anger is an anger that the Lord allows us to feel when there's injustices, but it's not for selfish gain. And Ephesians 4 verse 26 says, "Be angry, but do not sin." And Saul here, he was angry not because of a personal sense of hurt or pain, but because of a righteous concern for the cause that the Lord was bringing to him. And we read in verse 7. So now Saul took 2 oxen and cut them into pieces and sent the messengers to carry them throughout Israel with this message. This is what will happen to the oxen of anyone who refuses to follow Saul and Samuel into battle. And now Saul was getting people ready for battle. But Saul wanted to make it very clear that if the people did not stand up to defend this cause of the Lord, then it would be treated as a sin and it would be punished so. And if we read the end of verse 7, it says, and the Lord made the people afraid of Saul's anger, and all of them came out together as one. And we see unity here. We see the fear of the Lord come upon the people, and unity is then formed, and they take up the call to go into battle.
Yes, so they take up the call to go into battle. And what happens here is that Saul gives a promise to the people of Jabesh. In verse 9, it says this, by the time the sun is hot tomorrow, you will be delivered. And he gives them this promise, the promise that even comes with the timeline of when he was going to come and help them in their battle. And one of the things that we also see here is that God gives Saul a strategy to be able to conquer the Ammonites, and he gathers the people, and he gathers them in numbers, and they're able to attack the armies that were against them, and they defeat them, and they are victorious because of the Lord. And if we think about the story of Saul, Saul had been anointed in the previous chapter, and also he was appointed in front of the people. But now all that was missing was actually the physical evidence of the fact that God had really picked him and anointed him to be king over Israel. And this victory comes about as that evidence that God was with him and that God had called him to be king over Israel. And it brings that assurance to the people as well that are following him, that actually this man was called by God. And you can even see that is filled by the power of the Lord in verse 13, when one of the people says, hey, Saul is our king. Who were the people that were opposing him, so that we may kill them? And Saul says, no, this is not the time. In verse 13, this is not that no one should be killed today on our camp. And we can see that even in this time, the enemy is trying to distract what has happened here and to take the light away from the victory that they have gotten, and is dividing them. And then sometimes, even when we're in victory, the enemy can come and bring doubts to us. But we need to stand firm in what God is doing in our lives, and know that it was God, and God used this victory to bring about his light over Saul, and the fact that he had actually picked him to be king. And now we're going to read in verses 14 and 15. It says this: then Samuel said to the people, come, let us go to Gilgal, and there reaffirm the kingship. So that all the people went to Gilgal and confirmed Saul as a king in the presence of the Lord. There they sacrificed fellowship offerings before the Lord, and Saul and all the Israelites held a great celebration. And you look at this, there's a situation that is pressing against the people of Israel, and Saul is called upon to bring about the solution, and he's used by God to bring about victory over the people of Israel. And I can't help but feel that God sometimes will use our difficult situations, or times when we feel like we are under pressure, for him to be revealed, and for him to actually show up and show off his power and his anointing over us, and his calling over our lives. And may God bless you.